So hello, Mike. Welcome to the presentation of Group 5, Team 2 about IBM. Well, in this presentation, we will first look at IBM's performance on the stock market. Then there will be the part where we will analyze and discuss IBM's involvement in the 5 transformative technologies. Then we will have a quick look at how IBM is, let's say, organized, or about its structural organization, and we will look at specifically on the change of CAO, the background of this change and why it happened, and yeah, also about we will look at diversity in the corporate leadership, and at the end there will be a SWOT analysis. So let's start. Well, IBM is headquartered in Armonk, which is about 60 miles north from the middle Manhattan. But it is really a global company which operates in more than 175 countries. It is publicly traded company, and currently in this year, its price per share fluctuates somewhere between $100 and $150. If we have a closer look at how it's developing on the stock market, we can see that it's really volatile, I would say, in 2020, especially when we compare it to the last year. We see that it was much more stable. It was not really growing, but at least it was stable. But this year is really shaky. And of course, we can see huge, I would say, turbulence in February, April, March, due to the COVID-19 crisis. Well, if we put this development in the context of other technological companies, we can actually say that this kind of turbulence or this shaky development is pretty similar or common to many of the companies such as Microsoft, Google, Oracle. Only Apple got through the pandemics quite smoothly. But on the other hand, when we look at the development of how it actually evolved after the hit of the pandemics, IBM is not doing that well compared to other companies, because, for example, Google or Apple, they somehow managed to get over their pre-pandemics level already, and that does not really hold for IBM. It is still under its level of 2019.
Hello, Mike. How's it going? This is Sean Elamo here for Group 5's IBM presentation. It's been a great semester, and I can't wait to present to you the findings that were sort of realized in this process. So I chose the AI transformative technology space because it's something that I've always been interested in. I didn't know much about IBM prior to this class, but I did know they were sort of in the AI space because of the Watson product. So here we go. In February 2011, IBM debuted Watson for the first time. Prior to this, Watson was sort of talked about as this supercomputer. Everybody was excited about it. People had high hopes that this supercomputer would sort of be the next thing for our future. People thought the computer would win Jeopardy. IBM Watson went against defendant champion Craig Jennings, who had the record for the most Jeopardy wins of all time, and I believe he also won the most amount of money. IBM Watson easily defeated Ken Jennings and his other competitor. It was the eureka moment for IBM. From that moment, it was clear that IBM would be the dominant leader in the artificial intelligence sphere. It was determined to do this. This was back in 2011. In 2020, it is clear that IBM is sort of still leading the forefront, though they might not necessarily be the only person there. They do provide unique services that not many other companies provide. IBM currently offers thought leadership when it comes to AI. IBM provides lots of reader materials when it comes to this topic because it feels that the whole world should learn about AI. It provides forums, discussions, and just whatever resources they feel will be needed to sort of bring everybody along on this AI journey. IBM also provides artificial intelligence consulting services to enterprises, whether it's for your cloud, cybersecurity, hosting, whatever falls under that AI umbrella, really, IBM is a leader in that and provides a solution for that. Going forward, the IBM Watson computer has been really commercialized and it offers premium artificial intelligence solutions to the companies that could afford it. So we could take one practical look at how IBM is helping in the global economy when it comes to Watson's AI solutions. So when it comes to Kaiser Bank, what IBM Watson is doing for the bank is sort of streamlining the response, the online response section. So previously, and I'm pretty sure you can relate to this, when you have an issue with your bank, if it's a quick issue, you could either send an email or go to the bank's website and chat. So what IBM has done is sort of like taken control of that process for Kaiser Bank. So instead of redundant questions being asked by Kaiser Bank's employees, it now goes through IBM. In this process, because Kaiser Bank has millions of consumers, it takes a long time. But now that IBM holds this process, Kaiser Bank was able to use its resources differently and help their clients in different ways. Another way IBM is shaping sort of like the workforce is sort of helping match skill sets, CEOs of major companies realize that their current workforce doesn't have the super skills to sort of march towards the strategic vision for them. IBM is dealing with that. So what IBM has done is sort of implemented ways to sort of easily pick up which employees have a certain type of skills and taking that information and sort of rerouting their career so that they can do different things within the organization. Another way is IBM is sort of, when you apply for a job, IBM is sort of like reading through your resume, picking out which skill sets are sort of relevant to the job to sort of streamline the hiring process. And because of that, the hiring process went down and IBM was able to sort of pick the right individuals for the job, which at the end of the day saves time and increases revenue for the enterprise because, as we know, the new currency are skills. IBM is also helping train employees as well. With the IBM software, it can sort of, if an employee realizes, hey, I want to learn a new skill because of this, or this is my background, how can I best use my skill set? IBM will take care of that. Everybody wins in this scenario.
So now I would like to talk about blockchain and IBM involvement in this technology. IBM is trying to do blockchain since around 2015, and since this time, it has definitely shown us that it can think big and act big. Currently, it has more than 2,000 experts in this field and cooperate with the hundreds of companies. I would say that the major accomplishment in this field of IBM is the IBM blockchain platform. It works like kind of an umbrella platform for other innovative companies. IBM is somehow trying to give the support of this well-established technology company to other smaller innovative companies, so that it can have like domino effect, I would say. And so it provides support, consulting, and technological tools for companies to do their own solutions. Regarding concrete projects, I would say it is a really broad palette. It varies from energetics to healthcare to taxes. And in this presentation, I would like to speak at least about three areas, which are banking and finance, healthcare, and food supply chain. But there are many more, and we are more specific about it in the paper. So regarding banking and finance, I would like to mention especially the situation in the European Union, because in European Union, there is still stricter and stricter demand for transparency and safety. It is imposed, or it stems from the directives from the European Union that tries to ensure that all the operations in this area are getting more transparent and more safe. And IBM is definitely answering to this growing demand in Europe. So it cooperates with banks, it cooperates also with central banks, and it tries to help, for example, in making the validation of documents or identities more like easy, automated, and transparent. So this is banking and finance. Regarding healthcare, I would like to name especially IBM's cooperation with FDA, Food and Drug Administration. I think that this cooperation very nicely illustrates how relevant IBM is in the field of blockchain. And with FDA, it works on research on how to do like research in healthcare more transparent. I think it is really valuable to work on this, because in healthcare there is a huge data all over the world, but because it is very fragmented and because it is very sensitive, because usually it's on really patient level. So it's really sensitive to somehow like put it all together and derive some solutions based on these data. So I think that blockchain is making or can make a really big difference in this, because it can somehow like connect all these fragmented and sensitive data in anonymous and safe way. And this can very much help in providing new innovative solutions and doing research in this area. Last but not least, there is the food supply chain. And I would like to mention especially cooperation of IBM with Walmart. And thanks to the technology of IBM that is implemented in Walmart and in its supply chain, Walmart is actually able to track or to find some source of a specific food. For example, in the case of contamination of something, it can actually find the source of the food in 2 seconds now, which is really a big difference, because previously, when there was no technology of this kind, it took it like 7 days, and it was connected with lots of costs.
One of the transformative technologies that I was doing research on for IBM is the IoT, the Internet of Things, which for me, this is a very new term. I've never used it before, never heard of it before. But what is our Internet of Things? It's a bunch of connected devices which produce information. They give out metrics. One great example is a smartwatch. It's connected to your wrists, connected to your phone, connected to Wi-Fi, and it can measure things like your heart rate. It can measure your sleeping patterns. It can measure potentially how many carbs you burned. how many carbs you ate, all depending on how you set it up. And IBM truly believes that this will transform the way we all live and we all work. So my first point here is IBM has invested $3 billion in this sector. And how they did this, and the reason why they did this is because here are some stats. By the year 2025, it is expected that over 22 billion devices worldwide will be connected, and over 3 billion smartphones will also be connected. It is expected by the year 2023 that in the IoT industry, it's projected to be worth over $1.1 trillion. Now, this is a lot of money. This is something that's growing very, very fast. And it brings me to the first point, like I said earlier, IBM investment of $3 billion. What are they doing? What are they doing to invest this? Well, they are investing in their Watson platform, as well as around 750 IoT related patents. And to brush up a little bit on the first point as well, since 2011, IBM hasn't experienced much revenue growth. So this is something that's in their box three. They know it's going to be worth $1.1 trillion, and it's something they want to get their hands on, they want to dabble with, and it could bring them to a projected revenue growth. So the next bullet point is 5G. 5G, the reason why it's important is because these IoT connected devices, they're going to be producing a ton of information, and they're going to need a lot of bandwidth. A lot of bandwidth that 5G will be able to handle. So 5G is being rolled out to its full potential very, very soon. And this is exactly what IoT devices will need in order to work and function properly. The previous 4G wasn't enough. But with the 5G, they will be able to keep up with this. And to have a quote from one of IBM's press releases is that IoT will be the single greatest source of data on the planet. So it just makes sense. If it's going to be the largest source of data on the planet, then they're going to need an up-to-date bandwidth that will be able to handle it all. Next point is augmented reality. This is something that is already happening currently, but IBM, it's in their box three. They know it's something that they're working on. There's much more room to grow. So they're working on technologies that could, for augmented reality, that could work in other industries, such as healthcare, manufacturing, supply chain, and especially the automotive industry. This is one industry where augmented reality is really going to hit hard. A good example of augmented reality that IBM is implementing is what Michael Porter in his article he calls after sales service. And that brings me to my next point, after sales service. The partnership between CBRE, the largest real estate company, and IBM was recently strengthened this year. They work together, and what they're gonna do is essentially so that a CBRE technician no longer will need an IBM field technician to be deployed to where they have issues that need to be serviced. Instead, a CBRE technician themselves, when they're properly equipped with an IoT connected device, an augmented reality device, they will be connected to IBM's platform. An IBM technician will be there to assist them step by step into making a service into a machine that needs servicing. Again, this will no longer need an IBM technician to be in the field, but instead through an AR connected device, a technician will be servicing an IBM computer machine. The next interesting thing is going to be IBM Maximo for civil infrastructure. So this is one that really caught my attention considering I am construction management. So as we all know, infrastructure, it deteriorates over time. Roads, tunnels, bridges, and of the like. So this is essentially an AI-powered IoT-based solution. And what it is, it's made to mitigate these deteriorating civil infrastructure where it is implemented. Again, bridges, roads, and tunnels will see the most use. Companies, they spend a lot of time inspecting these types of infrastructures, and sometimes it can be very difficult and it can be very costly as well. With specialized IoT sensors in place at these structures, they can be properly monitored by agencies. And in turn, what this can do is maintenance decisions can be made rather quickly to prevent any further deterioration and to catch a deterioration before it becomes worse. COVID-19, the times we live in currently. So during COVID, the demand for consumer IoT devices decreased, but industries like manufacturing, education, healthcare, supply chain, and automotive, they're moving forward with a lot of acceleration when it comes to IoT. The demand for remote access tools is high. And one reason for this is because it's currently being mandated at the federal level for us to be distancing ourselves from each other. So surely IBM will have this in their box 3. They know that there is a high demand for remote access tools, and very sure in their box 3, they're going to be investing even more into this.
Hi, everyone. So welcome to my presentation about IBM cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is one of the 5 transformative technologies, as we'll learn in class. And I'm going to briefly discuss this topic today. So I'm going to speak about cybersecurity products and initiatives. That's the first step. And IBM has various products that it suggests to its clients. So for example, we have detection of financial fraud, user behavior, analytics, securing connected cars, preventing malware attacks, all those sorts of products that are included in the cybersecurity of IBM. And they also have suggesting some initiatives to their clients. So it's not for sale, but it's part of the R&D that they have, which are the research labs, okay? Research labs that are owned by IBM and are all over the world. While one of the main centers is called CCOE, which stands for a Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, and it is located in Israel. And what they research there is topics like risk scoring in data security and detecting security vulnerabilities in cloud apps. Okay, so it's very interesting that that IBM has those initiatives, and it's amazing that as a large corporate in America, they can actually have their own research labs. I'm going to discuss now a little bit more about strengths and weaknesses that IBM has. And according to Gartner, IBM has a few strengths that we have there. So one of the strengths of cybersecurity of IBM is its sales strategy. Okay, what is special about IBM is that as a large corporate, they have many branches all over the world. Branches of IBM, for example, in Europe or in Asia or all over the world, and they actually use those countries' spaces to have sales and marketing there. So I find it much easier for a company to actually use the same language and the same culture to sell its products for for the same country. Okay, so for example, if I have offices in France, it's easier for IBM to speak in French and try to sell in French. And French people, they have their own manners, so it's easier for them. So this is a good sales strategy according to Gartner. Second, I guess, strength is their flexible deployment and support. Okay, so why is that interesting? Because I think from the little experience that I have, that deployment is one of the most crucial parts when determining whether a project is going to be successful or not. And why do I say that? Because product as itself can be amazing. Okay, much money was spent on R&D and finalize all the small things. But from what I understand, if the deployment was not good enough, okay, the project can fail completely. And deployment, it means that sometimes I have to look at a client that I have and just offer them not just the proper product, but also the proper support. Okay, they have to see who is the client in order to make the product as fit to him as possible, and the deployment process is extremely crucial at this moment. So IBM actually does support this, and it's one of its strengths. Another strength that we have here is IBM's ability to have integration with third parties. Okay, IBM is not the only company in the world. And what is good about IBM is that they know how to make their cybersecurity software speak with other cybersecurity softwares of other companies. So this is an advantage. And also, according to Gartner, they have very strong product abilities, which is always a great thing to have, right? So these were the strengths. Some of the weaknesses that I would like to discuss is some of IBM's clients said that the pricing may be a little confusing. So if you're a future client of IBM and you're listening to this, be careful, okay? They might trick you. Second caution that I would like to mention is sometimes the data collection is a little bit hard for some of the clients. Okay, so IBM actually suggests using external other extensions for the data collection. The third thing that is a weakness for IBM is the UX and the UI. User experience and user interface, which lacks a little modernization. So it makes sense because IBM is a strong company that has been in the market for many years. So they probably should update their user experience and interface. So next thing we would like to discuss is a little bit more about a certain field in cybersecurity called SIEM, which stands for Security Information and Event Management. So this is a small field, a small niche inside cybersecurity. And what I discovered there in my research was that we have a very strong, mature and competitive environment. And what is amazing is that IBM is considered a leader in this environment of this security information and event management. So what we saw is a very strong demand that is growing from year to year. And why do I say that? Because I saw a very interesting data that said that in 2017, they had a market share of $279 million. And just 3 years later, in 2019, they had $2.6 billion market share. This gap is huge, it's amazing. And it's very important to say that one of the most significant products that IBM has is a product called Curator. And what I find the most interesting about all of the things that I just said is that actually in 2018, there was a survey of many large companies, small companies all over the world. And they actually discovered that 68% of the companies worldwide do not know how to treat a cybersecurity threat. Okay, they don't know how to deal with it. So if they have cybersecurity threat, they don't know what to do. Okay, so I think that this is very interesting because it just shows how large is the growth potential. Okay, so we saw from 2017 to 2019 a large growth, and we still see 68% of the companies don't know how to deal with cybersecurity threats. Okay, so what I see from this is a large growth potential. So I think that not only I thought about this, and just an interesting thing that happened 2 months ago, recently, June 2020, IBM actually acquired a company named Spanugo, sorry for misspelling. And they, this is a company that only deals with cybersecurity. So they had been investing in cybersecurity specifically. And not only that, just fun fact, they actually opened a cybersecurity lab in Texas last year, 2019, and also expanded an existing lab in Israel. So I see a growth potential. I see, they're still investing IBM in cybersecurity. So this is a good sign. We have a large growth potential here. So basically that's it. Oh, one thing I forgot to say, very important, and to me it was an interesting fact. 1,400 patents were registered on IBM's name last year. Okay, this is amazing. It means that they do invest and they have a lot of research and R&D, and this is really great. So yeah, now I'm done. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed and it was interesting for you. Thank you.
Hi there. So I will be discussing two topics today. First would be the diversity within IBM's corporate leadership. And the second topic will be the opportunities IBM is primed and ready for in the future for growth. So just as a whole, I would like to start by saying that diversity is such a key characteristic in how business is run and operated, and it just means so much to an organization because it drives innovation. And the individuals who not only work for the company, but purchase the products from the company, and the companies that purchase product from IBM want to see diverse people in their leadership. They want to see it because they service a wide variety of people. So it's not just one-dimensional and one type of person using IBM services. So I just make a point to say that it's not just a buzzword. It's very, very important. And IBM recognizes this, and they're making some improvements to how their diversity structure is, as well as understanding how there's a demand for key groups and key people within the organization that need to be highlighted. But that's just a brief overview, and I like to just start by saying that IBM is a very stable company. In the history of the company, there have only been 10 CEOs. More recently, Ginny Rometty was the first female CEO, which was an incredible marked accomplishment. She really broke through the glass ceiling and revolutionized the industry for women in tech. So as it stands, IBM, it was such an accomplishment for IBM and for the industry in and of itself to add another diverse person who's immensely talented, who has experience within the various business units in IBM. It just shows that this person can rise through the ranks and implement change and be a great CEO. Obviously, she stepped down, and now Arvind Krishna is the current CEO. But I just like to highlight Ginny as a huge player in making IBM shift their mind and their focus towards a different type of individual running this company. It's not just one-dimensional. We can have an individual who is a woman, who's diverse, who's experienced, lead the company. So that being said, I just like to highlight that tenure is also a big player within IBM. Most of the executives work for IBM for 20, 30, 40 years, and they rise through the ranks. So there's not a lot of young 20, 30-year-olds in their executive leadership. A lot of the senior managers and the executive board and the corporate leadership have been at the company for a really long time. And that's how IBM has done it for a very long time. And IBM originally started as a family company, so it was very, very hands-on. So it's very much a promotional structure within IBM. You work for IBM for a certain amount of years, and you get promoted through the structure. So it's just interesting to note that there's not a lot of external hirings, especially for executive leadership positions. It's not a lot of, okay, let me just pluck this person from here, pluck this person from here, pluck this person from here, and start a business unit and just do it. It's really pairing people from IBM who have a diverse experience, but it's mainly building that talent within and really building initiatives around the talent to make them more well-rounded, whether that be career services or starting mentor programs with children starting really young, so that the future of people who want to go down the tech route know what IBM's about and why it's such a sought-after company. So I say that to say it may not, their executive leadership, it features not a lot of youth, but it still features a diverse level of skill sets across different disciplines within the department. And with that experience in the company, the ages that you'll see is around 50, 60 years old for their executive leadership and 40 for their senior managers. So that being said, IBM's diversity in their corporate leadership, it needs improvement. Their board of directors and executive leadership is mainly male. There are a few females, but it definitely needs some work. And I believe that IBM is making a huge jump in the industry with all of their initiatives, and whether it be women in tech or including various different groups, whether it be groups from different sexual orientations, religions, locations, socioeconomic status, and highlighting those people and showing that they have talent and they have a voice within the company, and they should be highlighted, and their efforts should be rewarded. And if more of this energy and more of this approach is taken to the business, it will be much more well-rounded. So diversity does play a key role in IBM and what they're trying to do, but just in terms of their executive leadership, it is lacking a little bit. But we can look forward to definitely seeing more people of color, women, and different individuals of sexual orientation and religions as well. So just highlighting IBM's initiatives, it really just shows that they're trying to grow their ethical footprint and be a leader within the industry who actually cares and not only implements, but takes actionable items and places people in position who are talented and who do deserve a voice within the company, and they don't get drowned out within a department. They have a voice, and they can project it, and people will listen to them, and their ideas will be heard, and they can create and innovate just like IBM does. It's a tech company that requires innovation, or you'll get disrupted in the industry. So more ideas, the more fresh the ideas come, the more innovative the company is going to be. Just highlighting that diversity drives innovation. So their executive leadership is almost an extension of the programs that they're putting out. The executive leadership's goal is to be a resource in the company's ventures, whether it be mentorship programs, whether it be career service programs. They want to be linked to it and want to be available as a resource for questions or for any other information.
So welcome, and thank you so much for listening. This is Shelley. I'm going to speak about the strengths of the SWOT analysis in our group project of IBM, about IBM. So I'm going to discuss 4 main strengths that IBM has as part of the analysis that we were researching. So the first thing I'm going to discuss is IBM's robust business model, which is, in my opinion, can be found mainly in two purposes that IBM has for its business model. So the first purpose is the integrated solutions that IBM is suggesting to its clients. And what do I mean by integrated solutions? It means that if, for example, a certain company or a certain client of IBM has a specific problem, let's say from the cybersecurity world, some CEO comes to IBM and says, IBM, look, I have this weird problem that some kind of virus keeps attacking my business over and over. It attacks the computers, it attacks the, I don't know, the AC systems. I have this cybersecurity problem, so what should I do? So part of what is great about IBM is that it gives its client not only the business insights to how to solve the problem, but also the IT solutions. So for example, if I am IBM, I will suggest the CEO business insights. So for example, I will suggest they should hire someone for the role of cybersecurity analyst or cybersecurity manager that can manage the situation. And I can give them some data about how did it happen, when did it happen. Okay, so some kind of insights that will help the company solve its problem. So it's not only the business insights, but it also the IT solutions that IBM can provide. So for example, they can provide some sort of mechanism or software that can help the company to overcome this problem of cybersecurity that they have. Okay, so this is one of the main purposes that IBM has. The second purpose that IBM has is the long-term value that it can actually give its clients. So what do I mean by long-term value? I mean that IBM, although it's a huge corporation, I love to call it dinosaurs because it's kind of a dinosaur, you know, it has been in the market for dozens of years. It still maintains some kind of flexibility and some kind of adjustments to the market. And how do they do that? Actually, being a corporate allows IBM to invest and buy other small companies or small ventures and technologies. And by investing in those technologies, they can actually, you know, develop themselves better. So it's very hard for corporate in America or anywhere in the world to provide such a long-term value of innovation, okay? Because small companies are usually more innovative and more fast-phasing, and they can, you know, move forward faster. And IBM is not a small company, so it takes a long time for IBM, you know, to change some of its, I don't know, technologies, markets, all sort of those things. So I think that this is a huge value that IBM has. Being a corporate allows it to invest in smaller companies, okay? So those are the two purposes I discussed. So first is the integrated solution, and second is the long-term value that it can give. Sorry. So this is the first, let's say, first strength that I'm discussing. The second strength I would like to discuss is the middleware market. So a middleware, it's a little hard to explain, but I will try. It's kind of a software that lies between the operating system and the application that run in it. So it's actually kind of a software that integrates between all the components inside, let's say, a computer. Okay, so I have a mouse here, which is a hardware, but it also has a software, and it has, you know, some chip and a keyboard and all sorts of, you know, operating system inside of the computer, which, you know, they were not initially designed to be speaking with each other. They're not integrating with each other as is, okay? So there must be some kind of platform that integrates them together. So this is the middleware software. And what is amazing about IBM is that it actually has 30% share of the middleware market, which is a huge deal because there are not as many big competitors in this market to IBM. So it's really amazing that IBM has it, and it's a huge strength in the market. The third thing, the third thing I would like to discuss regarding the strengths is innovation. So I spoke a little about this before regarding the long-term value and all those things that IBM invests in, small companies. So this is also connected to this, but a little bit in a different way, because here, when I speak about innovation, it's a little different. This is something that is actually inside IBM. So what happens is they actually invest in their own labs. Okay, this is amazing because, for example, I know that in Israel, they have their own labs in Beersheba, which is a city in Israel, that innovate some kind of cybersecurity systems and innovation. And it's really, really amazing. So they have their own innovation, and it's not only acquiring and purchasing other companies, it's actually investing in its own innovation. So they have a lot of those labs all over the world. And they also have many patents that they are registering on their name. Okay, so this is really amazing. The fourth thing is, another thing that I wanted to discuss about innovation, maybe it's kind of the fourth thing that I would like to discuss about the strength, is actually the acquiring of Red Hat. So it also has something to do with COVID-19, because Red Hat is actually a company that is specializing in cloud transformative technology, which is one of the 5 transformative technologies that we discussed in class. And Red Hat is also a huge corporation, and IBM actually acquired this and merged with Red Hat. So what Red Hat does is it has a huge cloud innovation and cloud systems and cloud technology that can really, really help IBM to modernize its own products, okay? Because IBM, again, it's a company that has been in the market for a few decades now. And as I said before, it's hard for huge dinosaurs to innovate. So they acquired Red Hat, and Red Hat is going to help a lot for IBM to modernize their apps, especially in the cloud world, which is an amazing thing, especially in COVID-19, where everything is cloud, everything. So basically that's it. I hope I could give a good overview about the strengths of IBM. Thank you for listening.
Part of my SWOT analysis, I will be discussing weaknesses that are currently being experienced by IBM. Here in this slide, you're seeing a few key points that my research has led me to as to what's currently happening with IBM. And the first key point you will see are liquid assets. IBM is currently experiencing low liquidity. And the reason for this, I will explain shortly. But in the meantime, I need to explain there's a couple of points from liquid assets that arise when a company has low liquidity. One of those is that generally speaking, IBM could find it very difficult just funding their normal everyday day-to-day operations. And then the next point is they could hinder them from acquiring potential growth opportunities or investments. So as part of your box 3, IBM, they have a vision, they know, they have an idea of what the future could hold, and they know that you have to invest in certain technologies and certain platforms in order to get there. And unfortunately, having low liquid could hinder this. So what is it that could make a company have low liquidity? Well, the obvious answer is low revenues, low sales, and these are all things that could come from the top, that will trickle down from the top. And the biggest decision maker in IBM is the CEO. And in this case, Miss Gina Rometty, she was in office from 2012 to 2020. And just to give you some stats on the financials of IBM. So in the year 2011, the year before Gina took office as CEO, IBM reported a $105 billion revenue. And in the year 2019, which is the year that Gina, the year before Gina stepped down, IBM reported a revenue of $75 billion. So this is approximately a $30 billion difference. And it just appears that Gina had failed to make certain changes quick enough. This was a time when the industry was changing also very rapidly, and customers of IBM were starting to use technology a bit differently. So an example, instead of customers buying servers and paying IBM to maintain all of this, these companies were renting computer horsepower from other vendors. Some could say that Gina has struggled to bring any consistent growth to IBM during her time when she was a CEO for 8 years. So there's some evidence for this as well. At one point from 2012 to 2020, shares of IBM fell 25%. Now, this all happened during the similar time frame when other tech giants, when they blossomed. And a perfect example actually is Microsoft. Microsoft is one of the biggest competitors to IBM. When IBM shares fell 25%, in the similar time frame, Microsoft shares actually rose to 500%. Very big difference. And another thing is when Gina first came into office in 2012, her first 22 consecutive quarters in office, sales and revenue fell year after year consistently. And it appears that even some of the shareholders saw Gina as being a weakness in the company and being at fault for having loss of revenue to IBM. And the evidence for this is that when IBM announced that Gina would be stepping down from her CEO position, shares of IBM rose 3% that week. So the next point is the cloud. The cloud is something that IBM could have been a giant leader in. Unfortunately, they did not advance in this department, and instead they are playing catch up. Amazon is one of the biggest leaders in the cloud. And despite IBM having the cloud, having the customer base, and all they could have done, which sounds relatively easy, was move them over from the mainframe onto the new platform. It was something that they unfortunately failed to do. It wasn't in their vision, it wasn't in their box tree, and now they are playing catch up. They are catching up to this. It appeared that they just ignored some of the weaknesses around them and some of the disruptive forces.
So finally, with regard to opportunities, IBM needs to take advantage of their system integration. They need to build up and expand upon their new acquisitions. And they need to also develop emerging business units that they can be a first mover in and that they could take advantage of. They need to scale their platforms and integrate their systems using Watson and having future emerging technologies play a huge role in this, whether it be cloud-based computing or any kind of other analytics. They need to integrate their systems so that across the board, users who have IBM systems or users that purchase IBM products will be able to use that as a gateway to buy more IBM products and utilize more IBM services so that it'll be more profitable for them in as a company in the long run. Second, the acquisition of Red Hat by Arvind Krishna was a massive, massive land, and using the operating systems in those diverse teams and being able to harness that data and vertically upscale companies will be massive, and it will be a huge opportunity. Diversity, meeting the client needs, and growing other people's businesses. That's what IBM could look forward to if they integrate their systems, as well as play their strengths according to their acquisitions and what they're able to do with their operating systems and working with other companies. The deliverables will be much larger if they're able to utilize these properly. Lastly, the industry for AI and cloud-based technology has grown tremendously, and it's going to continue to grow, whether that be blockchain, whether that be Internet of Things, whether that be cybersecurity. Just the need for cloud, the need for AI is going to continue to increase. So it's going to be a direct relationship if IBM can create the security and can create the systems and the functionality to supplement that increase for companies, the cybersecurity systems that they're able to implement as well, and the services that they're going to implement with that initiative, will yield a significant amount of equity and profitability. So that's definitely what IBM could look forward to in the future, just integrating their systems and having complete integration as best as possible. Really playing on Red Hat and really building on it and creating different business units tailored around that service and around those teams that were integrated with IBM, as well as increasing their cybersecurity and their programming for cybersecurity with other companies that use the services. The external companies who use IBM services are going to need higher cloud security. So if IBM is able to provide that level of service, it will yield dividends. So thank you.
So as part of my SWOT analysis, I chose threats. IBM faces a lot of threats. Being a company, the main threat that IBM faces is the threat of competition. Funny enough, IBM does not make computers anymore. It hasn't done so in a long time. They actually sell software and provide consulting services. So their competition comes from the likes of Oracle, KPMG, Deloitte, Bain & Company, Boston Consulting Company, McKinsey, Microsoft, Amazon, Infosys, just to name a few. IBM always has to ensure that they create the best possible product to compete with these companies. And if another company offers a product that's sort of in IBM's AI space, IBM has to ensure that they create a more competent product so they can be competing as well. Like I mentioned earlier, IBM isn't the only company in the AI space, so they always have to build and ensure that they're offering the most adequate AI solution. Finally, the major threat that IBM faces is the global economy. Though IBM is a US company, it's a player in the global sphere. So it constantly has to keep track of geopolitical issues. We've seen recently about TikTok being shut out of the United States. TikTok didn't necessarily do anything wrong, but just because of the current government, it's currently being threatened, even though TikTok was the biggest app of 2020. Other things that face IBM are currency fluctuations. It's been documented that IBM has lost hundreds of millions of dollars because the currency of the space that they play in was valued way less than the dollar, so they lost a lot of money. And IBM has no control of these things. Natural disasters also threaten IBM. We can see with COVID-19, with the global shutdowns and everything, people were inside, people couldn't leave, people had to sort of stay inside. So because of that, nobody could build the products that IBM uses, or IBM couldn't consult for global companies. And at the end of the day, that impacts revenues and that impacts IBM stock and different things like that. And it may lead to downsizing. So IBM always has to constantly be on the lookout and be on the prowl for these things because it affects IBM even though it has no control of it. It has to try its best to mitigate the risks and ensure that if whatever happens, IBM can still run smoothly. So thank you, Mike, for your time. Hope you enjoyed my presentation, and thank you for everything throughout the semester. Have a great day and take care. All the best.